If the Sabbath really doesn't matter anymore, then why did God write it with his own finger on stone tablets? That's not a post-it note you throw away. That's something that's permanent. Yet people say, well, Jesus fulfilled the Sabbath, so we don't have to keep it anymore. But think about it. Since when did fulfilling something mean erasing it? That doesn't make sense. A commandment that was designed to bring rest and freedom has somehow become one of the most debated and misunderstood topics in Christianity. And let's be honest, you've probably wondered, if salvation is by grace, why does this command even matter? Or maybe you've thought, isn't keeping the Sabbath just legalism in disguise? Let's dig into it. Have you ever noticed how worn out we all are? Stress is like the air we breathe. Burnout has become a bandage of honor. Our phones buzz around the clock. Our schedules are jammed. And somehow we're supposed to believe that taking one whole day of rest is optional? Science tells us that our brains literally break down under constant pressure. Dopamine gets hijacked, cortisol floods our system, and our immune defenses weaken. No wonder anxiety and depression are rising so fast. The Sabbath is God's answer to this chaos. In Exodus chapter 20, God says, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God." Notice that word remember. God knew we would forget. And hasn't that happened? We've traded sacred rest for scrolling, binge watching, and chasing more money. The Sabbath is not about God taking something away from us. It's God saying, stop running yourself into the ground. Come rest with me. Still, one of the most common objections I hear is, didn't Jesus fulfill the Sabbath so we don't have to keep it? But when Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, was he saying it's now time to throw out the Ten Commandments? Not at all. He was saying, watch me live them out perfectly. Fulfillment doesn't mean cancellation. It means demonstration. That's why Jesus healed on the Sabbath. That's why he fed people on the Sabbath. He wasn't breaking it. He was showing us how it was always meant to be lived. In Mark chapter 2, Jesus said, the Sabbath was made for people, not people for the Sabbath. It's a gift. Jesus didn't get rid of the Sabbath. He showed us how to open it. And let's be real. If fulfilling something means throwing it out, then why aren't we tossing out the command to not steal or the command not to murder? No one is making that argument. So why only the Sabbath? When you look at the early church, the Sabbath was still being kept. Acts chapter 13 shows Paul preaching on the Sabbath and people asking him to come back the next Sabbath. Acts chapter 18 says he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath with both Jews and Greeks. That's decades after Jesus rose from the dead. If Sabbath had been erased, why are the Gentiles keeping it? Or non-Jews? History shows it wasn't until centuries later, under the influence of Rome, that Sunday observance started to replace Sabbath rest. So the real question is not whether God changed his law. The real question is, are we living by God's rhythm or by man's tradition? Here's where it gets personal. The Sabbath is not just about a day off. It's about authority. Who has the right to shape your time and your life? God or culture? Revelation chapter 14 says God's end-time people are those who keep his commands and remain faithful to Jesus. Obedience and faith side by side. Romans chapter 6 reminds us that whoever we obey, that's who we serve. We are all serving something. Maybe it's our boss, our bills, our habits, or maybe it's our God. Here's the irony. Some people say keeping the Sabbath is slavery, when in reality, it's the only thing that breaks slavery. It frees you from the grind, from always being on, from letting work and worry run your life. And if God's law doesn't matter anymore, then where does that stop? If the Sabbath can be erased, does that mean God's character changes too? James chapter 2 says, if you keep the whole law, but break just one part, you are guilty of breaking all of it. God's law is not a menu where you get to pick and choose your favorites. It's a reflection of who He is. Hebrews says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He does not change. That means His commandments don't shift with culture either. The Sabbath is not about trying to earn points with God. It's about recognizing who He is. Ezekiel chapter 20 says, I gave them my Sabbaths as a sign between us, so they would know that I, the Lord, made them holy. That means Sabbath isn't about me proving my holiness. It's about God reminding me that He makes me holy. Every week, it's like God signing His name on your life and says, you belong to me. Think about it like this. Imagine you're drowning in work and exhaustion and your body aches and your mind is spinning. Someone throws you a life preserver and you say, no thanks, I'll just keep treading water. That's what ignoring the Sabbath is like. God throws us the gift of rest and we say, I'll just keep struggling. Or picture your marriage. Your spouse says, this is our anniversary. Don't forget this date. And you say, every day is the same. I don't need that one. How long before they feel forgotten? The Sabbath is God's weekly anniversary with His people. If you've ever felt exhausted, if you've ever felt defined by your job, your failures, or the demands of everyone around you, then the Sabbath is God's invitation to step out of the rat race. It takes you back to creation when God rested. It points you to the cross where Jesus rested in the tomb before rising to life. And it points forward to the eternal rest God has promised. Did Jesus fulfill the Sabbath? Yes. He filled it with meaning. He showed us that it's not about rules, it's about relationship. It's not about earning salvation, it's about living in God's rhythm of grace. So here's the real question. Will you take God at His word, or will you let culture decide what matters? The Sabbath is God's gift of time. Throwing it away is like throwing away one present that could heal your restless soul. And maybe that's the real reason the enemy fights so hard against it. Because the Sabbath is where you stop trying to prove yourself and start resting in the one who already proved His love at the cross. This isn't about a rule. It's about Jesus. The same Jesus who said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Will you step into that rest? Will you surrender your calendar, your excuses, and your pride, and let God write His rhythm into your life? Because the Sabbath is not about what you lose, it's about who you find. And His name is Jesus. Don't forget to check out the additional Q&A down below in the comments. May God bless you.